Also, really appreciate Dan joining us again this morning to go over this fight because there's been, I mean, I haven't stopped thinking about it all weekend. I'm sure Dan Rafael from Fight Freaks
And,
Unite hasn't either. Dan,
and
how are we
I,
doing this morning?
I'm a little tired, to be honest. It's been a long week and traveled back yesterday, but gotta talk about the fight. So I'm up for it.
listen, it was the first choice for us to bring guys back to talk to. And I get it. I'm a little bit of a fanboy as a boxing historian, Dan, but you further convinced me that I kind of know what I'm talking about when I like guys that cover boxing. Just the thoughtfulness, the presser. I know Terence really, really well, and the way that he listens to your questions, the way that he addresses your questions lets me know that he respects you too, man. I felt like you handled it. Would have been easy to approach that presser from a lot of different angles, man. Class act as always. So I appreciate you joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I've been covering Terence Crawford from not day one in terms of his professional career, but pretty much once, I don't know, I forget what it was. Maybe it was like 5-6-0. He signed with Top Rank. I had known his, manager, Cameron Duncan, for many years. Cameron passed away about a year or so ago.
Yep.
And when he signed him, and Cameron was like a lot of people in boxing, they like to inflate the truth perhaps a little bit, exaggerate. But he always steadfastly talked about the talent of Terence Crawford. And so I was watching him on these undercards, but he hadn't gotten to the point where Top Rank was putting him on television. And at that time, there wasn't outlets like a DAZN or an ESPN Plus or what have you that they would show the entire undercard. So unless you were there in the building, you wouldn't necessarily see the guy fight because he wasn't part of any broadcast. But when they put him on HBO for the very first time, if I recall correctly, the opponent for the other fighter had dropped out on short notice, and Terence was on the undercard. And they moved him up to the HBO position on the card. And so I ended up doing an interview with him and wrote about that switch to get into this big position. And from, that was, how many years ago was that? I don't even know. It's a long time ago. My point is I've been interviewing and attending Crawford's fights and writing and opining and everything about him for as long as anybody, I guess, that's maybe not from Omaha. And, to be honest with you, Crawford and I, we've had a few ups and downs.
Yeah.
But he's always been a cool guy with me. No problem.
So that, again, I'm glad you said it because I'm well aware, right? There's been some back, and he's not always great about getting back to people, and he can be very, he can stand his ground, right? But when you
can I, by the way.
Well, that's kind of what you're known for, right? I mean,
go watch some YouTube clips of me and Adrian Broner going on.
Listen, I remember. So this was like 13 or 14. You and I were talking about why Hopkins. I'm a big Hopkins guy, and we were on air and we were talking about the promotions and kind of doing it his own way. And I remember even that got intense. And I'm like, wait a minute, I think we both like Hopkins. Why are we arguing? But it's just one of the things that I've appreciated.
By the way, Bernard once went like 4 years without speaking to me. And you know what? I was fine with that because I didn't want to speak to him either. And now, fast forward all these years later, Bernard Hopkins is one of the boxers in the sport, retired or otherwise, who I still have a relationship with. Bernard and I text each other. We talk about our families. When I see him at fights, we don't even talk boxing. We talk about our families and politics and other sports. And, so I have a very close relationship with Bernard compared to other boxers I've covered. But we've had a lot of ups and downs.
Listen,
the nature of the game.
I took umbrage with the scoring, right? I didn't love it. I'll take a win as a win, but there's this part of me that wants people to know how dominant Bud truly is. That's why I loved your questioning with all the accolades, and with Bud's like all of them, because it took 90 seconds just to read the accolades that he's accomplished. But when you looked at the scoring, do you care how it ended up versus how we'll remember Crawford? Because I think they should be one and same, but 115, 113 to me seemed criminal.
Well, then I'm going to jail because that's how I had it.
Oh!
I think people are losing their minds over this. This was a close fight. I mean, that's me. I don't know if people were persuaded by the broadcast announce team how they were scoring it. Now, I was not privy to that live because I'm in the stadium and I'm watching in the ring, but we were far away, unfortunately, but you still had an unbelievable view from the screen. So I'm watching it just without audio, but I've watched plenty of fights, and I don't need the audio guys to tell me how I should be scoring a fight. So the way I looked at the fight was the rounds that Crawford was winning were kind of close. There was a couple of dominating rounds, but Canelo, for example, like in round 2,
It's
off
about
the top
the
of my
only.
head. He had a very dominant round. That was like, so if you give Canelo round 2 because he wins it going away easily in the round, and partly because Terence Crawford has notoriously been a slow starter, and then you pick a round like somewhere in the middle of the fight where, it's kind of close, but you give it to Crawford, okay, that's fine. But you see one guy, and that's why boxing scoring is so crazy sometimes, because you can win a round big and you get 10-9, if you don't get the knockdown. But you can win another round where you might shade it because you land one extra punch and you still get the same score of 10-9. There's no added bonus for being more dominating. So when they got to the middle of the fight, they're going back and forth on my scorecard. When I got to round 10, and I did this after the fact, I looked at the judges' official scorecards. 2 of the judges after round 10 had it 95-95. That is exactly how I had it. Now, Steve Weisfeld, who I've known for, probably 25 years, who I consider the best judge in boxing, he had it 96-94 after 10 rounds. So 1 round difference, 6 rounds to 4 in favor of Crawford. And then Crawford clearly has the best round of the entire fight in round 11, where he was walking Canelo down and backing him up and, going upside his
And
head.
he's standing in the middle of the ring toe-to-toe.
Yeah, exactly. And where people thought he would try to box and move, but he stood his ground and he went in there and he fought him. And he won the 11th round big, and then he won the 12th round handily. And so now that comes out in the scoring. You have Weisfeld because he gave him he won the final 2 rounds on all 3 scorecards. So Weisfeld comes up with the 8-4 card, 116-112. And the other 2 judges, because he won those last 2 rounds, he wins it 7 rounds to 5, 115-113. I thought that was fine. Now, if you want to tell me that you thought maybe Crawford should have won at 117, you're changing one other round in the fight. I don't understand why people are losing their minds. He won the fight. That's the bottom line. And he did so without leaving any doubt. So if you had it a little bit closer, then maybe somebody that scored a little bit wider, okay, fine. By the way, boxing is subjective. And you're not necessarily right, and I'm not necessarily right. There's ways to look at fights a lot of different ways. And I get so sick and tired of all the BS after fights because you all come up with the same winner, but God forbid we were 2 rounds different. Oh, come on. So don't tell me I'm a criminal, okay?
The irony of us going back to where we started, but I still love you, so it's fine. I get it.
Dan, let me ask you this, because I thought the last couple rounds, especially with Crawford, where like DB's saying, he's standing in the middle of in the ring and exchanging with Canelo in a way that nobody thought he was going to do. It seemed to me reasonably early that Crawford had took a couple shots from Canelo and decided he didn't think Canelo could hurt him. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But at what point in the fight did you kind of, or did you think Crawford thought, hey, I think I can stand in with this guy and I don't think he's going to hurt me?
I forget the round it was. It was early first, probably in maybe like the 3rd or 4th round, there was an exchange.
Oh, the overhand right that got home, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he didn't budge from it. And you're like, okay, Canelo hasn't shown big punching power in his last several fights. Now, he hasn't had a knockout since 2021 when he fought Caleb Plant, which was really his last great performance when he became the undisputed champion at super middleweight for the first time. And ever since then, although he did lose to Bivol moving up in weight, but the other super middleweight fights he won, and he won handily. It wasn't like he was really in any kind of danger whatsoever. And he did score some knockdowns in those fights. He dropped John Ryder. He dropped Edgar Berlanga. He dropped he's scoring knockdowns against Munguia. He was getting guys on the ground, but he wasn't finishing them. If you take the Munguia fight out of, for example, there was one moment in that fight where I really felt like, because he didn't want to embarrass Munguia, he liked Munguia, he was another fellow Mexican, that he had him ready to go in like maybe the 10th or 11th round. And if you watch the video, there's a moment where he lands like a big punch on him, and he literally grabs him by the arm and holds him up. I feel like he carried him to the end of that fight. But besides that, he scored several knockdowns. He dropped Charlo, for example, and Berlanga, and Ryder. These are all in a row. You know what I'm saying? So ever since the 3rd Golovkin fight, who's got Golovkin with one of the great chins of all time, as does Canelo, in order, Ryder, Charlo, Munguia, Berlanga, all on the deck. But he didn't finish them. And then William Skull, who ran for 12 rounds, he never even got close to the guy. So he showed power from the standpoint of getting knockdowns. But Crawford, has always, shown a good chin. These guys combined together have like over 100 fights, and there's never been an official knockdown against either one of them. So obviously Crawford was coming up in the weight, but the fact that he built his body up the way he did, my question going in is, okay, is he going to go all the way up to super middleweight or right about there to try to be sturdy, and he's going to maybe he's going to try to stand in there a little bit? Or is he maybe going to come in, 65, 64, and have to go all the way to 68? Because if you come in a little bit lower, now I'm going to box. I want to retain my speed. I want to give myself the ability maybe to move a little bit more. So when I saw him come in at 65 or 67 and a half, that to me anyway,
that's the
and
difference.
I haven't had a chance to ask Crawford this, but I'm thinking, I'm not here to box and move. I'm here to stand and fight if I have to. And that's exactly what he did. So when he got hit with that right hand that you referenced, I'm like, okay, he took the shot. He doesn't want to take too many of those, but he knows if it has to happen, he can deal with it. He didn't run. He stood in the pocket, and he traded with this man at times. And then the end of the fight, the biggest surprise of all is he, a guy not known for this type of style, was walking the guy down, the much, so-called bigger guy, more experienced guy at that weight class, and he was taking it to Canelo Alvarez.
Dan, I'll let you know how the sausage is made Friday. True story. We're at the barbershop. So cue all the stereotypes. Yep, we were at the barbershop. We're
talking about boxing, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
Well, I mean, do people really go to the barbershop to get a haircut these days? They go to the boxing?
So right away, and I've been one of these honks, right? I'm like, hey, take him. He's more skilled. The over-under's 10.5. You and I talked about the rounds. Once they both weighed in at 167.5, I don't think guys could flock to the casino fast enough to get the plus money, because I think the discussion for the last 2 months was, because even Terence was kind of iffy on how he wanted to build it, right? He's not a beef eater. He just how he was going to get there was going to take some time with his team. But once
he was sure what he was going to do.
He wasn't. He wasn't.
Yeah. If you take a look, so on the July 18th or 19th, which was the day before the Manny Pacquiao Barrios fight, and I was in Las Vegas covering that fight, but the folks that were running this show were able to connect me with Terence Crawford on a Zoom call. And one of the things I asked, and you can actually find that video, was on our Big Fight Weekend YouTube channel, and I asked him specifically about, because I was interested, because I've dealt with this before with other fighters, Bernard Hopkins being a good example, about when a smaller guy is purposely going to move up to take on, obviously, a much so-called bigger guy, is how do they do it? Are they going to go all the way up to the top of the weight limit? Are they going to come in lower? And I was interested in that. And so I asked, for Bud to talk about, how are you going to reshape your body physically?
Yeah.
What is sort of like the plan? And he was like, I'm going to eat more and I'm not going to have to cut muscle, but in terms of like what I'm going to weigh, I don't know. I'm like paraphrasing him. And, at that point, there was still like 2 months to the fight. We'll have to figure it out. I assume they went to camp and, they were already in camp, but they figured it out. They had to, decide what the strategy was going to be. And clearly, and the proof is in what occurred, he decided, I want to be as bulky as possible for the fight. And I'm going to fight the guy.
Of these three characteristics, put them in order in terms of, if you get Canelo to say, hey, Crawford's a much better fighter than Mayweather. I won't get into whether he is or isn't, but just the fact that Canelo said it, it obviously has some merit. Rank these three things in Crawford that you think matter the most. His mind, right? His self-belief, his elite level fitness, which I think is underappreciated, or his boxing IQ. Kind of slot those three things in importance that gets guys like Canelo to say what he said.
It's not just Canelo or Crawford. To me, if you're a professional boxer at that level, it has to be the self-belief. It just has to be. I mean, you can work on the physical part of it, but you can't. You either believe in yourself or you don't. I mean, you can go to the gym and do your reps and do your running and do your pad work and do all the things to put yourself in supreme condition and all that. But if you don't believe in yourself, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'll give you, and this just popped into my mind when you were talking about it. I saw Frank Bruno against Mike Tyson. Frank Bruno was like a body cut from God. I mean, just a chisel.
Got off to the good start against him, too.
I'm talking about the second fight where he was so petrified.
Oh, yeah,
he
terrified.
had no self-belief. He walked to the ring. He was crossing himself like 50 times. Like he knew he was going to the death chamber.
Kind of like Spinks, right?
You could be in.
Oh, God.
There's no chance he could win that fight. He had no self-belief.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts.
Well, you see it with a guy like, I think this is right. We're like Roy Jones. After he lost the first one, it was never the same.
To Tarver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like after he got the first, like it was just never the same again.
And Tarver starts the next. What's your excuse tonight, Roy? Like you knew it was going to be over.
No, but the first fight when he fought Tarver and he lost a decision.
Yeah.
In that particular fight. And I'm not discrediting Antonio Tarver because Tarver was a superb, one of the great amateurs in United States history. He became a top-level light heavyweight champion. He beat a lot of good fighters. I mean, he's a borderline Hall of Famer. But in the first fight, I'm going to give more credit not so much to Tarver, but because Roy Jones was coming off the heavyweight fight against John Ruiz, and he had to shed literally like 20, 25 pounds of muscle essentially to get down to the weight. And he still, on his worst night, bit down and won the fight. Now, by the time he got to the second fight with Tarver, that had taken its toll, and obviously Tarver had seen him for 12 rounds. And, again, not to discredit Antonio, when he knocked him out, it was his eyes were closed and he threw a left hand. But Roy Jones, that was, I think, more physical because of the weight cut. Now, obviously, in terms of Terence Crawford and Canelo, he'd have to do a weight cut because he obviously was moving up 2 divisions to take him on. And so I think each fight you could think of there's some type of their difference. Not you can't put everything in like one bag.
For historical reference, Dan, because you've seen it all. More impressive with what Sugar Ray did against Hagler relative to Hagler's prime, or more impressive with what Crawford did to Canelo relative to his prime?
I have to go with Leonard, and I say that because Leonard was coming out of a 3-year retirement. Crawford was not retired. Yeah, he may have been off for 13 months, but he clearly wasn't retired. And he came back and did what he did the other night. But Ray not only had been retired, but he'd had the retina problems. He was also moving up multiple weight classes. And Hagler, in a similar vein, let's say, to Canelo, was a guy known for the awesome chin and big power and all that. But he had, in the not too distant past, he had beaten Hearns. He had beaten Mugabe in a very tough, hard war. And Ray was ringside for that fight. He saw something, but I don't think the public necessarily saw that Marvin wasn't what he was. But I still think it was the Ray thing. And I say that also because in terms of the buildup, although the fight that we saw Saturday is obviously going to have been viewed by gazillions of people on Netflix and this and that, it wasn't the mainstream kind of event all through the world and sports like Hagler and Leonard was. That's one of the biggest events in boxing or sports of the entire 1980s. That was the fight that people had anticipated for years. I mean, if you think back to when Sugar Ray Leonard won the welterweight title against Benitez, live on ABC in whatever that year was, 1981, I guess. On the undercard in the co-feature was Marvin Hagler in a middleweight title fight where he got a draw, didn't win the title. But the point is, even as back far as that 1981, so 6+ years before they finally fought, they were on the same show together. That was not an accident. There was a lot of discussion for many years they would fight each other, and Ray teased and then invited Marvin to the ceremony. They thought they were going to announce the fight, and Ray retired and got Hagler all upset. So the buildup was so much greater. In terms of Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, this was a fight that Terence Crawford thought about a few years ago and wanted to have it, and then it finally became like a thing, if you will, in the once the Errol Spence rematch was not going to happen. And being honest, there was never a public demand for Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez. Now, we'll take it because anytime you can get 2 great future Hall of Famers to fight each other, that's a good thing. But there was no particular public demand to see this fight, as opposed to Leonard and Hagler, which the world had died for so long.
Dan, I got to ask you, as we're talking about historical context here, as we talked a ton about legacy and what this means for Crawford beforehand. Now that it's over, now that he got the win, I mean, people are talking about where he ranks pound for pound, where he ranks historically. How do you put this in historical context for what this means for Bud Crawford's legacy?
Well, I think in terms of right now, there's still a 3-headed monster in terms of who you like pound for pound. Some people will pick Crawford. Can't argue with that. Some people will pick Naoya Inoue, who's much more active, who also, like a few hours after Crawford beat Canelo in Japan, Inoue beat Akhmadaliev, who was by far the best contender in his weight class, and he did it easily. And he's also been much more active than Bud's been. And, of course, Alexander Usyk, who is the undisputed heavyweight champion, who is on an amazing roll right now also and looked, extremely sharp. He's got the same kind of background. He's won titles in multiple divisions. He's also, actually, with Crawford becoming undisputed in 3 weight classes, 140, 147, now 168, the other 2 guys, there's only 2 other people that have even done it in 2 weight classes among the men, and those are the 2 guys I just mentioned, Inoue, who's been undisputed in 2 divisions, 4 divisions overall, and Alexander Usyk, who's been undisputed in 2 divisions in cruiserweights and heavyweights. So those are the 3 guys right now. But if you tell me you think Bud's number 1, I can't argue with that. I actually am thinking to myself, who do I want to put in that position? I may be, if the spirit moves me later in the week on my Fight Freaks Unite Substack newsletter, I may do my top 10 pound for pound and take the abuse from everybody that wants to get on my case about my list. But historically speaking, we already knew that Crawford was going to be in that conversation just for his previous accomplishments. But when you beat a man of the Canelo Alvarez stature, it raises you up. So, I'm not a guy that's going to jump at the moment. I try to keep things in perspective. So when I go on my social media and I see, oh, Bud Crawford should be like in the top 3 of all time. He's on the Mount Rushmore of all time. Everybody calm down. Take a deep breath. He's not on Mount Rushmore of all time. He's not in the top 3 boxers of all time. These are people that clearly never heard of Sugar Ray Robinson or maybe Muhammad Ali or maybe Henry Armstrong, et cetera, et cetera. But in boxing, like if you're like, think about the NBA, they make the all NBA, like the 75th anniversary, and they pick the top 75 players, or it's that type of thing. If you're doing like a top 50 boxers of all time, yeah, Crawford's going to probably find a place on your list. I don't know where he might be. I've never actually done my own top 50, but that's still massively elite company. Like I wouldn't put Crawford in the top 10. I mean, and again, this is not a knock on Crawford. I love Crawford. He has 2 big wins, Canelo and Spence. And the other ones are not his fault because he was frozen out for a while because of the back and forth between PBC and Top Rank.
Yeah.
But you don't get historical rankings based on who you didn't fight. You get it based on who you did fight. And unfortunately for him, he was denied certain opportunities, but that's life. And so he has the 2 great victories, but he doesn't have the depth of a resume of other all-time greats, even though he's got the accomplishment. So he became a 4-division lineal champion, which is one of the things I referenced in my question that you were talking about at the press conference. Who did he do that against? He became the lineal lightweight champion because he beat Ray Beltran. Ray Beltran will only need the Hall of Fame if he buys a ticket. Okay? He became the undisputed junior welterweight champion against one of the worst champions in recent boxing, Julius Ndongo, who was nothing but getting knocked out by everybody after Crawford. And I don't want to say he got lucky by getting the title, but he was in the right time, in the right place to get those 2 belts. And of course, Crawford, good for him, they were opportunistic and they brought them together. I'm only making the point that it's not only about what says on your resume, it's what's behind that resume. How did you achieve that? And he didn't beat those types of guys to get to that position. You don't take it away from him, but you have to look at who he actually beat. So I'm not putting him in the top 10 all time. I'm sorry. Sue me.
All right.
A criminal.
Last one for me. I think if he did fight again, it would be something, it's Memorial Stadium, 93,000, something like that. Not very many fighters are going to sign up for that. Do you care if I don't think Charlo wants any parts of Crawford, but do you care at all that there'll be no Ennis or potentially? Does it matter who he didn't get after this?
I mean, not really. I mean, the Ennis is of a different era in a way. I mean, if he fought him, that'd be great. That'd be, I'm not saying that he wouldn't win the fight, but it would be, depending on the result, it'd be like one of those passing of the torch kinds of fights, which happen in boxing. But there's no pressure on him to fight a Boots Ennis. I don't think anybody cares about that. As far as what he's going to do, though, I was thinking about this. Most of the time when you see a big super fight, there's like an obvious path or like, okay, what's the next big fight? It might not be the next one in terms of what actually happens, but you can see another opponent that might be the next fight or 2 fights or what have you, and you can sort of start to point towards that. After this fight, I don't see an obvious opponent for Canelo. He's fought everybody at this point. He doesn't want to fight David Benavidez. Okay, whatever, and David's now a light heavyweight. And for Crawford, he made it very clear at the press conference he's not going back down to 154 pounds. Okay, fine. So the 2 choices, I guess. And he also said, somebody asked him, would you go to light heavyweight? And he said no, because, he's too small for that, it seems to me. So the options now, okay, I'm going to stay at the super middleweight limit and defend my undisputed title or some selection of belts because the mandatories will start to come calling and eventually something will get stripped or he'll vacate or what have you. Or middleweight, which is a very weak division at the moment. So if he's going to fight again, you can either take over as the opponent for the guys that we're mentioning for Canelo next if he had won, and that's guys like the winner of the rematch between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., the British contender Hamza Shiraz, those types of names. Or, and I actually kind of like this idea. I think this is interesting if you want to create more history, because he's going to get paid no matter who he fights.
Yeah.
Maybe he wants to go to middleweight and pick up another belt and become a 6th division world champion, which at that point, you're talking about in men's boxing history. And I'll ask the same question. I'll just expand on the history. He'll become one of only 3 fighters on the men's side of boxing to be a 6th division world champion. It would be Terence Crawford if he won a middleweight title, Oscar De La Hoya, who won it in 6 divisions, and of course Manny Pacquiao, who did it in 8 divisions. That's another piece of history he can make. And if you want to go one step further, maybe they could get a bout with a fighter like Janabek Almakhanuli, who's got 2 of the titles. He could become a unified champion by beating him. And Janabek is not a well-known guy, but he's got great experience. He was a top-level amateur. He was in the Olympics. He's undefeated. He's got good punching power. Again, he's unknown. But again, if he wants to make another piece of history, and that's a fight that could probably be built up with the history element of it, maybe he decides to go to middleweight and try to get a belt there also, or stay at super middleweight and, like I said, continue on with some of the top contenders. But there isn't that, like, Canelo name, sticking out there that you can point to and say, I want to try to fight that guy.
That's Dan Rafael. Fight Freaks Unite on Substack. Dan, we appreciate the time. As always, go try and catch up on a little bit of sleep this week, okay?
All right, first I got to go, I guess, apparently, because my scorecard was so bad, I got to take my phone off.
Yeah, you got to turn yourself into the local precinct down there.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.